Welcome to another deep dive. We always try to bring you fascinating perspectives, and today is no exception. We're going to explore something that might just turn your whole idea of meditation upside down.
Oh,
How so? Well, our source material today approaches meditation not as some kind of, mystical practice, but as a skill anyone can develop.
okay. I'm intrigued. Like learning to play an instrument or something.
Exactly. The source actually makes that analogy. It compares meditation to, say, learning the piano.
Hmm.
A concert pianist wouldn't just show up for a performance without practicing, right?
Yep.
Their skills would deteriorate.
Makes sense. So consistent practice is key in both cases.
Right. And that really gets at a common misconception about meditation. People
Yeah.
often think it's something you only try when problems arise. Stress, anxiety.
Yeah.
They hit a crisis point and then they're like, okay, now I need meditation.
Right, like a quick fix.
Exactly. But this source flips that script. It says waiting until you're overwhelmed to practice meditation is like that pianist only practicing right before a big concert. You're setting yourself up for failure.
Makes sense. So what's the alternative?
Building that skill steadily, day by day. The source calls it the education of the will, which I think is such a powerful phrase. And it presents this really fascinating idea. When your will and your imagination clash, your imagination wins every single time.
That's thought-provoking. We can try to force our minds to focus on something, but if our imagination is wandering elsewhere, that's where our attention will ultimately end up.
That's the idea. So before we go any further, let's get clear on what we're even talking about. When this source talks about meditation, what's it actually defining?
Well, it does start with some standard dictionary definitions. Fixing attention, planning in the mind, devising continuous contemplative thought, that kind of thing.
Okay, but then it gets more specific.
It does. It boils it all down to two key elements: controlled imagination and sustained attention. Those are the essential ingredients we're really going to be unpacking for you today.
And those are the skills we need to develop, right? Controlled imagination and sustained attention. How do we actually do that? What does the source say?
The fundamental process is really quite straightforward. You focus your attention on a specific idea, and you hold it there. You keep bringing your attention back to that idea until it fills your mind to the exclusion of everything else.
Sounds simple enough, but in reality,
Oh, in reality, it can be quite challenging. The source calls this ability the power of attention, suggesting it's a measure of inner strength.
because it takes effort, it takes will.
Precisely. And the key is not just to passively think about your chosen idea, but to really concentrate on it. Don't let other thoughts intrude.
Yeah, but let's be honest, our minds wander. What happens when we get distracted? Which, let's face it, will happen to all of us.
The source acknowledges that. It says when you notice your attention has drifted, and you will notice, you simply bring it back, gently, without judgment. Just return to the idea you're focusing on.
Okay, so it's a continuous process of refocusing.
Exactly. And the more you practice, the easier it becomes to hold your attention steady.
But doesn't that sound, I don't know, kind of boring? Just sitting there focusing on one idea?
Well, that's where the choice of idea becomes crucial. It needs to be something that truly captivates you, something that sparks your interest and keeps you engaged.
I can see that. So what's the ultimate point of all this? Where does this focused attention and controlled imagination lead, according to the source?
Well, the source puts it this way. All meditation ends at last with the thinker, and he finds he is what he himself has conceived.
Whoa, so we literally become what we focus on.
That's the implication. It contrasts the disciplined mind, the one that can control its attention, with the undisciplined mind, which is constantly pulled this way and that by whatever seems most pressing at the moment.
Right, like we were talking about earlier, reacting to problems instead of focusing on what really matters. So this silent sanctuary, what is it?
Ah, yes. The source uses this image of meditation as a silent sanctuary to emphasize that inner space we're cultivating. It's a refuge from the constant noise and distractions of the external world, a place where you can connect with what the source calls eternal perspective.
Okay, eternal perspectives. That sounds almost, I don't know, spiritual.
Well, the source does delve into the spiritual implications of meditation, but it also presents it as a very practical technique for mastering your mind. And it actually shares a personal anecdote about someone dedicating themselves to mastering their attention and imagination through daily practice. Day after day, this individual worked on controlling their inner world, their thoughts, their imaginings. The source calls these fleeting moments of insight magical
Yeah,
lights.
it lights.
Yeah, that's the term the source uses. The goal was to learn to evoke these insights at will, to become the master of one's own inner vision.
Interesting. But it sounds like a lot of work.
The source doesn't shy away from that. It acknowledges that mastering the mind is no light labor. But it also suggests that this practice doesn't have to be confined to formal meditation sessions.
Oh. So we can practice it in everyday life.
Exactly. The source talks about consciously maintaining focus even during routine activities. It's about bringing that same unwavering attention to whatever you're doing, even if it seems mundane. Like if you're washing the dishes, really focus on the feeling of the water, the soap, the plates. It's about turning every activity into an exercise in concentration. The source compares it to the work of a plowman. It's hard work, but it yields results.
Okay, I can see that. But doesn't that sound kind of exhausting, constantly having to focus?
It can be, and the source is very honest about the challenges. It says there's a powerful internal resistance to meditation that we all face. It even compares it to armies trying to quell a revolt. And the distractions come in many forms.
Like what? What kind of thoughts try to derail our focus?
Oh, all the usual suspects. The source mentions alluring thoughts about loved ones that pull you away, old enmities that suddenly resurface, fears that grip your mind. These things can completely sabotage your concentration, sometimes for long periods.
It's so easy to get pulled off track.
It is, and that's why the source asks this really pointed question. What man is there who has complete control of his imagination and attention? It's a question that really makes you stop and think about just how rare and valuable this skill actually is. Because the source goes on to say that a controlled imagination and a focused attention are the foundation of, as it puts it, all magical operations.
Okay, I'm really curious about this idea of magical operations.
Well, it's important to understand that the source isn't talking about supernatural powers or anything like that. It's about harnessing the power of your mind to shape your reality, to achieve your goals. It's the idea that you can bring about desired outcomes through focused intention and a clear vision.
So it's about manifesting what you want.
Precisely. But it all starts with mastering your attention and imagination.
So what happens if we actually stick with this practice? What's the long-term payoff? What does the source say?
The source describes it as a gradual unfolding, the creation of a center of power within yourself. It's like embarking on an inner journey, a path that, it says, is open to all but traveled by few.
Why do you think so few people travel it?
I think it comes back to that internal resistance we were talking about earlier. It's so easy to get discouraged, to give up when the going gets tough. The source acknowledges this, saying the path often starts in shadow and darkness, but it also suggests that with consistent effort, an inner light begins to illuminate the way.
That's beautiful imagery.
It is. And what's really encouraging is that the source emphasizes that this isn't about having special gifts or being some kind of genius. It's about persistence. It's about showing up and doing the work day after day. And over time, the source says, meditation becomes less of a chore and more of a delight. It compares it to a daily appointment with a lover, something you actually look forward to.
Wow. Okay, so we've practiced consistently, we've faced down our inner resistance, and we've cultivated this center of power. What happens next? What does this deeper level of meditation feel like?
The source uses a beautiful analogy. It compares emerging from deep meditation to a diver rising to the surface for air and light. There's this sense of renewal, of clarity, of coming back into the world with fresh eyes. And this connects to the practice of vividly imagining your desired goal as already accomplished. The source suggests that by repeatedly experiencing that goal in your mind, feeling it as real, you're actually drawing it closer to you in your physical reality.
So there's a real power to visualization.
That's what the source argues.
Now, there's this part where the source talks about the only test of religion. What's that all about?
Well, it's basically saying that true religion, true spirituality can't just be something you adopt from someone else. It has to come from within, from your own direct experience. It has to be a product of your own inner journey. And this is where meditation comes in.
Because it connects us to that deeper part of ourselves.
Exactly. The source contrasts mental knowledge with spiritual knowledge. Mental knowledge is what you gain through observation, comparison, analysis, all the stuff we do in the external world. But spiritual knowledge comes from direct experience, from becoming the thing itself.
Can you give an example?
Sure. The source uses the example of love. You can't truly understand love just by reading about it. You have to experience it, to feel it. Same with understanding the divine. You have to cultivate that godlike consciousness within yourself.
Interesting. So how does sleep fit into all of this? The source seems to link meditation and sleep.
It does. It presents them both as entrances into the subconscious mind. It even references the biblical verse about going into your closet to pray, interpreting that closet as the inner sanctuary you create through meditation.
So meditation gives us access to our subconscious.
That's the idea. It describes meditation as an illusion of sleep. Not actual sleep, but a state where the external world fades and your mind becomes more receptive to inner suggestions and insights.
And that's where Keats' Ode to a Nightingale comes in.
Precisely. The source points to that poem's description of drowsy numbness, that feeling of your senses becoming pleasantly dulled, as a way to understand the deep relaxation achieved in meditation. It's that liminal space, that in-between state, just before you fall asleep. And even Keats questioned the nature of reality in that poem, asking, was it a vision or a waking dream? Do I wake or sleep? That captures the vivid, dreamlike quality of this inner state.
So any turning inward, any focusing of attention away from the external world can be considered an outcropping of the subconscious.
That's what the source suggests. And it uses this helpful analogy of the subconscious being like a tide that ebbs and flows. Sleep is like the high tide, when the subconscious is most dominant. Full wakefulness is the low ebb. And meditation occupies those in-between states, those moments when we're more receptive to the workings of our inner world.
And I remember you mentioning this highest tide compatible with conscious thought earlier.
Yes, and the source suggests that this is a particularly potent state for meditation. It's that sweet spot, that state of deep relaxation and openness that often occurs just before you drift off to sleep and right after you wake up.
Okay, and the source actually gives a technique for reaching this state.
It does. It's surprisingly simple. Find a comfortable position, close your eyes, and imagine yourself getting very sleepy, like you're about to take a nap. Just hold that feeling of sleepiness in your mind. And yes, distracting thoughts will inevitably come up, but gently bring your attention back to that feeling of drowsiness.
Okay, so we've reached this state of deep relaxation, this passive state of mind. Now what?
Now you focus on your desired goal. The source says to focus on things of good report. Vividly imagine your ideal outcome as already achieved. Feel it in your heart, in your mind, in your body, and really embrace this affirmation. You are it now.
It sounds like we're talking about the power of belief, the power of seeing yourself as already having what you want.
Absolutely. The source emphasizes the importance of assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, of wearing the mask of some other more perfect life in your inner world. It even suggests that without this imaginative ability, self-discipline becomes almost impossible.
Wow. I never thought about it that way. So meditation isn't just about emptying your mind. It's about filling it with the right things.
Exactly. The source describes meditation as an activity of the soul, an active virtue. It's not passive. It's about deliberately choosing what to focus on, what to cultivate within yourself.
And what happens when we do that? When we really embrace the feeling of the wish fulfilled?
The source suggests that it leads to a profound shift in your perspective. You develop a complete indifference to potential failure, because in your mind, your goal is already a done deal. It's like knowing the happy ending of a play you're acting in. That knowledge gives you a sense of calm and security, no matter what challenges you face in the present moment.
That's really empowering. The source also has this interesting idea that creation is finished. What does that even mean?
Well, it's playing with this idea that all possibilities already exist in some sense. What we perceive as creation is actually just our becoming more receptive to those possibilities. It's about aligning ourselves with the pre-existing potential of the universe. The source even quotes that biblical verse, "Not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord of hosts."
So it's about tapping into a deeper creative force.
That's one way to put it.
So what's the ultimate result of all this? What does consistent, dedicated practice of meditation ultimately lead to?
The source describes it as the awakening of a center of light within you, and this inner light becomes your guide. The source uses the image of a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, leading you forward on your path.
Okay, and I know at the end of the excerpt there were some resources listed, some books by Neville Goddard and Margaret Ruth Broom, and some products by iAwake. Should we talk about those?
You know, the source does mention those as possible avenues for further exploration, so if you're intrigued by these ideas and want to dive deeper, those might be some good starting points for you, the listener. But for this deep dive, we've really focused on the core ideas presented in the excerpt itself.
So just to sum up,
Yeah.
the big takeaway here is that meditation isn't some esoteric, unattainable practice. It's a skill that anyone can learn and develop. And it's about so much more than just relaxation.
Exactly. It's about mastering your attention and imagination, about consciously shaping your inner world, which ultimately influences your outer experience.
And the source makes it very clear. This isn't about having some special talent or gift. It's about dedication, about consistent effort.
Precisely. It's open to anyone who's willing to put in the time and the work.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. What might change in your life if you started consistently and intentionally directing your attention and imagination towards your desired goals? Imagine experiencing your goals as already accomplished, feeling them as real in your mind. What might shift in your perception of reality? What mask of your ideal self might you start to wear in your inner world? Think about it. Maybe this deep dive has given you a new way to approach the practice of meditation, something to explore and experiment with.